What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, Eugene and I are going to talk about gym culture. Obviously, we will talk about gym culture for a while, and then it's going to go all over the place. But gym culture is kind of the thought that sort of spurs this podcast on. And this comes from he was reading a book, which I've read as well.
Grit.
Talking about how the culture is going to shape things, and we talk about the idea of how culture can shape all of us, and again how you can shape your culture. It goes back and forth, and so we'll get into this idea and talk about again whatever else we decide to discuss here. Big thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web. Charles Webb recently sent me sent both of us a new thing that they have. A spray. He's got the calm one. I've got the sleep one. The sleep one's got valerian root in it and skullcap. Typically I'll drink every now and then. I very rarely do it, but I'll drink like a tea that'll have valerian root in it. Generally speaking, the valerian root knocks me on my butt. So I'm going to see what this does. So I'm going to try some of that sleep. Because I'm a little tired today.
Yeah.
I've been cutting a little bit of weight. And by cutting, I'm not mean like a hard cut. I mean like dieting cutting, like losing a pound a week or so. But I've been dieting a little bit. I'm a little tired today. Wore out from yesterday. So I'm going to try to get some good sleep tonight. I'm going to try it out. I'll let you guys know how it goes. But it's a spray. So instead of taking the droppers or the gummies, whatever, you can use a spray. It's very small and would probably be really good for portable traveling. So, for instance, the tinctures are typically plastic, or glass bottles.
Yeah,
it's not usually a bad thing, but if you don't want to carry glass bottles around, probably kind of problematic. Also, depending on how much the ounces and stuff it is, you may not be able to travel with it. And then the gummies are in a huge container.
Yeah.
So it's not the easiest thing to travel. This thing's a little tiny thing that you can just slip into anything. And so we're going to try those out and let you guys know the results. But if you guys want to check out any of their CBD products, you can go to their website at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu to save on your order 15%. And again, you can use it for any of their CBD products that they have on their website. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. Matt at Epic Roll is currently helping us put together a pre-order for Jiu-Jitsu rash guard and shorts. So the rash guard is going to be a Jiu-Jitsu rash guard. It's very simple. It's just a black one with the different stuff. And then we also have a set of shorts coming along with it. The shorts are the Velcro-less shorts. So they don't have a Velcro piece, and it's got a little drawstring in there. And again, I like the design of it. If you guys want to check them out, go to my website at jiujitsu.net, and you'll probably see some little picture there for like t-shirts or for gear or whatever. Click on that link, and you'll be able to then get to my shop. And then you can get on there and order yours. The pre-order is going to be from December 13th to December 27th, 2021. After that, the sale ends. So if you guys want to get them before the sale ends. Don't be pokey about it, because it always happens. Someone's like, "Oh, Chewy, I was going to get like, for instance, we had the Origin Geese, and I still got tons of messages like people like, "Oh man, I was going to get it, but I forgot." Just do it, right? So if you want to get yourself some gear, get it. And also in the meantime, should you ever want to go to Matt's website at epicrollbjj.com and check out any of his gear, you can get 15% off any of the orders with the code Jiu-Jitsu. Now, if you the code Jiu-Jitsu does not work for the pre-order.
Yeah, any
website.
custom gear that he's got, like anything specific that's like that creates
McDojo, Mason Fowler, any of that stuff.
Yep.
No codes in that. But anything else on his stuff, like his t-shirts, his basic t-shirts that he has, his Epic Roll brand stuff, 15% off with the Jiu-Jitsu code. And then also thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped is the premier men's grooming company. I just say that because it used to be all about below the belt. It used to be about ball trimmers and everything else. But again, the products they have everything from head to toe as far as trimming goes. I don't know what you're going to trim off your toes, but they don't. I don't think they have nail clippers. So from
toe hair.
Toe hair. You got to get rid of your toe hair. But they do make some really nice equipment. They've got a really nice trimmer that I use from anywhere that I've got to trim some hair off of, like my beard, my back, my balls. You can use it. And it works really well. It's waterproof. It's got this really cool light, which at first I thought was stupid because I was like, what is this light for? And I use the light and I'm trimming hair off of my beard, and I can see the straggle. Like I can actually see the hairs. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is actually really helpful. When Jess shaves my back, she can, like the tufts of fur that I have. I don't have carpet back, which is like some fluffy back hair. She can like get to it easier. And they also have a ton of different lotions, balms, colognes, everything else. And all of it smells amazing. I've loved all of their products so far and happy to have them as a sponsor. And so again, I would recommend you, if you're looking for some stuff to get the man in your life, or if you are the man in your life, that means you're a guy, then you can check out their website at manscaped.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20. You save 20% on the order and you get free shipping. It's a great deal. And also, guys, if you think that having a jiu-jitsu game plan would be a good idea, or if you think that having some strategies to drill techniques to make them better time, to make them more efficient, and to hit them more often in the gym would be a good idea, then go to my website at jujitsu.net/join, JOIN, and you can get my 2 free ebooks I give away. One is called it's just basically a game plan guide for jiu-jitsu. The other is Focus Jiu-Jitsu, which is got strategies for drilling your jiu-jitsu techniques, even if you don't have extra time. So if you're strapped for time, you don't have a lot of time for open mats to get lots of repetitions, there's strategies where you can do what I consider active drilling, and you can get that. And again, you get that, you're joining my email newsletter, the Chew Crew list, which again, if you like the emails, you get them, enjoy it. I send them usually Monday through Friday. If for some reason you do not like the emails, but you got the ebooks, take the ebooks. You can unsubscribe at any time. And also, guys, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to our website at patreon.com/thejujitsupodcast to join up as a member. It supports the podcast. And in return for your patronage, we will give you access to content that we've been putting together for several years, which includes everything from episodes that have never been released, just talks with Eugene and I. We have bits and pieces of talks that we had with different guests. Generally, we try to take an actionable tip that is related to jiu-jitsu for training or for mindset or whatever it might be, and we put that together, and we usually keep that in the back end of the Patreon. And we also have some other videos and things like that that have not been released on YouTube that you can access as well. And again, you can do that by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And with all that stuff out of the way, guys, let's talk. I thought we don't have a guest today. It's just us. So let's talk. Let's hear Eugene and I talk about gym culture.
Which we're going to talk about today, kind of like the gym culture, like the intentions. And I think we've both, you've trained at a couple different, maybe one different gym. And you've traveled to many gyms.
Yeah, I've been to lots of gyms, but as far as training like long term, I've trained one gym before I came to the one that I'm at now, and then each one of those took iterations, or it changed. The culture changed over time as new characters came in. Our gym culture's changed. It's not the same that it was when 2012. It's changed over the years because characters and people come and go and people change. And so I've been at one gym for the most part since 2007.
How do you think the culture, like, since I've been at the gym, since 2011? So how do you think it's changed since like that time to now? I mean, obviously some of us
we've gotten older.
We've
gotten older. We've gotten a little bit more like settled down.
Yeah.
We got more responsibilities. Back in the day, we'd all sit around forever.
Yeah.
A lot of us, we used to train a lot later.
Yeah.
We don't train nearly as late. I mean, we used to train. I mean, we would get there. Our class used to be for 7 to 9.
Yep.
Right. And so we would train for 7 to 9. Now we're all trained 6 to 7:30, 6 to 8. So we're still getting our hours, but we brought it in a little bit, because all the older guys were like, man, can we train earlier? And so, those things happen. And then it's also just the mindset's different. Like, when we were younger, it's like, oh, beat the crap out of each other, train hard, whatever. As we get older, it's like, I've got an injury and I need to slow it down a little bit. And, that kind of thing. It's just different. So it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing. And so, even the people come in and change. And so, I mean, over the time, I remember our morning classes for a while, we had a bunch of characters in there. We had like Big Nate, Big Rob.
Yep.
And then like obviously Tim and Jeff Horn, all these guys, there's all a bunch of characters, Dukes. And it was all these dudes where you would come in on Thursdays back then.
Thursday mornings.
And I remember like all of us would get together. I mean, it's like, sometimes I would have to reel it back in because we're laughing too much to really train. We're all goofing off that we can't even focus on techniques. And I'd have to be like, hey guys, bring it in a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's fun. It's like, so, and some of those guys moved away. Some of those guys changed jobs.
Yeah.
And so the environment changed because of that.
You talk about like us having a good time. That's part of the culture, is like, it's fun, but there's also a seriousness. Like you can tell, and it's an interesting balance. It's kind of a tough balance, right? Because you want it to be fun, but you also, when it's time to get serious, like there's a certain inflection in your voice.
Sure.
And like a tone that you have, and everybody's like, because yesterday we're rolling, and some people were getting like with the geese, all, and you're like, when you said it once, and people were like, I didn't really see what was going on. I
Yeah.
was like rolling with someone,
Yeah.
but you said it once and then you said it again. And like, I even looked, I stopped what I was doing. And like,
Oh, when I put the bass in.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
looked,
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, what the hell's going on? That's a, that's an interesting balance to have though.
Mhm.
Like that kind of that really fun lightheartedness, but also that like ability to like take control. Like, it's a unique thing. Is that something you feel like it's a hard thing for a coach probably to develop that or even maintain that?
I mean, it's one of these things where for me, it's like I think everybody takes everything too damn seriously anyway.
Yeah.
So let's have some fun. And then, we can be serious about getting better and training hard, but we don't have to be so serious all the time. We can have fun while we're doing it. And it can be an enjoyable process throughout it. You know what I mean? So like you can drill hard and get after it. And then at the same time, like when you have times you're like making jokes and stuff like that. And even like rolling, you know, you'll crack jokes with people sometimes like you ain't gonna get that pass on me again. That kind of, I mean, so you can still have that stuff.
Little
It can
shit
still be,
talking.
yeah, it can still be a fun time. It doesn't have to be something where, you can't say anything. That's one of the reasons why, for instance, I really enjoyed the wrestling environment opposed to what we would think of as a traditional martial arts environment. In wrestling, we would basically talk, hang out before and after practice. We train hard during, but it was fun. It was just like it was a group of people coming together. Martial arts, there's a lot more ritual. In some rituals, okay, but like it's a lot more like bowing and like show respect to your sensei, this kind of stuff. We think about it that way. And even some jiu-jitsu gyms have that where it's like, I mean, I've had like, I remember I had a guy one time come in the gym. He was from another gym that it's a lot more traditional than ours.
Yeah.
And by traditional, I just mean like they have what you would think of with like a traditional martial arts gym. And Big Rob was there, and Big Rob was goofing off.
Yeah.
He's cracking jokes or something. And, said something, you know what I mean? And I looked at the guy's face and he kind of like got like, oh, like thought that Rob was challenging me or something. It was like, with the fact that he was speaking up when I was like teaching, he got kind of, almost uncomfortable. And you could look at his eyes and, his gym is different. I've seen some gyms where it's like, white belts aren't allowed to ask higher belts to roll.
Yes.
In ours, it's like, if you want to roll, let's roll, and like, I mean, we can deny you. We can say, hey, listen, I need to get a roll with one of the higher belts because I got a competition coming up. But otherwise, yeah, let's roll, let's move, And so I think it's just it's a different environment. We keep it pretty relaxed. And I do that intentionally because of the fact that I feel like people have enough going on outside of the gym where things are so stuffy and all that stuff that it's like it's just a nice escape to not have to worry about a bazillion rules and just like, look, just treat people like you want to be treated and make sure you wear your shoes on when you get off the mat and trim your nails, and then we're good. Like simple rules.
Yeah. So like a lot of these like ideas for the podcast today, I was reading the book Grit, and she talks a lot about culture and like how culture can feed into grit and helping you, become more gritty. And so one of the things, like it's a culture is defined by the shared norms and values of a group of people. Is there like something, I'm just curious, like your thoughts, there are certain norms or values that like you've set like for the gym that like if people don't have these values, they're not a good fit? Because we've had some people that have left the gym and they just weren't a good fit. And then sometimes you can't quite put your finger on it, but do you think there's something that you see consistently, like at our gym maybe, or even gyms in general, like that maybe is just the,
well, I mean, there's different things that we have. Like, I mean, there's different unwritten rules and there's different ideas that we have that are sort of there. I mean, like you can think about the fact that at our gym, if you're a man and you roll with a woman, unless there's not a reason to, you generally take it a little bit easier. Especially with some of our women that are like 120 pounds.
Yeah, they're smaller,
Like you go a little bit easier, right? Because they're women and you don't want to break them and hurt them, right? I mean, it just is what it is. I know it's 2021 and people might say this, that, whatever, but men and women are just different.
At a caveat to that, like if you've got a man that's 120, we got some men that are like really small. And if you're like a 200 pound person, like you don't have to like put it on them like all your weight. You're gonna go to use a little technique,
right? And maybe that's a better way of saying it, right? Like where, like if you have like a 300-pound dude, and he's rolling with like a 150-pound guy, if I see the 350-pounder trying to pile drive the guy into the ground, like that's gonna be like, hey man, we need to talk, and because that's not what it's about. It's also about like taking care of each other, right? Like, so if I see someone who is trying to get submissions on people and they're being reckless, and they're not keeping. You can tell this may sound hard for other people that don't have an eye, haven't been around for long enough, but I can look at someone roll. I can watch their body move. I can even their body language.
Yeah.
I can feel the way that they roll, and I can tell instantly what kind of roll this is going to be, And so with some people, it's like with the situation where if the person is being a little too aggressive to the point where at the in range of submissions, it's one thing to be aggressive with like a takedown and you're going for guard passing, whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
But when you have a submission and you're trying to rip it or something, obviously that's a no-go for us, because it's like the submission, me beating my training partner and possibly injuring them, to us is not as important as winning
For sure.
that roll, right? It's like, it's just not going to be that good, because deep down, and I understand it's like, when you're rolling, I cannot get better without you, because I need training partners. And we're essentially like, you become like one unit. Like when you're locked into that person, you're this unit of people, two people rolling together, making each other better. So there's it's about the idea of like treating people the way you want to be treated. It's as simple as that. You don't have to overcomplicate it. It's a great rule.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have their arm ripped out of socket or whatever. So just do that. And just likewise, if you don't tap when you're supposed to tap, like nobody wants to like hurt someone. So don't make someone do that. That's a bad idea. And so again, there's basically unwritten rules, but generally it's mostly just that. It's having mutual respect for each other. And then we keep it fun. So it's very loose. So we do train hard. We are not the hardest training gym by any stretch. But at the same time, I don't want to be, right? Because it's like, I like, for what purpose? It's like, if you're not getting ready for a competition, there's no need to like grind down to a nub all the time. So it's like, we want to train hard, but I also want to make sure you can come back the next day.
Yeah.
So typically I try to stimulate and not annihilate people. That's like my philosophy on a lot of stuff, is like, if I can stimulate your growth, I can stimulate an idea in your head, I can stimulate you with movement and all this other stuff. And then the next day you can get up and go work out and train again. Well, then that to me is better than saying, man, we killed it. And a lot of people have they take pride in their sort of masochism. Man, I did this crazy way. It was brutal and I just killed myself. And man, my arms, I can barely move. Okay, great. It's fine. Can you train tomorrow? Are you hurting? Like, are you getting injured from it? Like, what is it doing for you? And again, there's a time to do that for sure. But at the same time, in aggregate, when you look at it for long terms, you need to be like, well, is this really helping me? So I'm kind of going off track there. But yeah, we have shared values and stuff like that. But and again, as far as why it doesn't work for people, there's been times where people come in and they're like, they're trying to be a little bit too cart before the horse. There's been several of those guys.
They're selfish.
They're
selfish.
And like literally trying to sort of position themselves as they are one of the authorities, and they've been training for like a couple of years. It's like, bro, I got guys been training for like a decade or more. Like, get your butt in line. Like, that's not how this works. You put the time in first and you show. And I think that's the biggest thing is like with our gyms, like we don't if you talk, we don't really care. It's like, show me. And that's most jiu-jitsu gyms, right? If you show me what you got. That's why rolling's so important. It's like why technique's so important. It's like, okay, you're saying you're this, that, whatever, show me. And so we don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. And people that are like that don't fit in with us too much. Because we're not, and people that showboat and people that are trying to like flex on other people, we just doesn't fit in. Like I had a guy the other day, I was like, hey, like, cause he cheered, he got excited. He was like, yes. And I was like, what? He goes, I use this submission, man. Everybody's been hitting me with me, and I finally got it on this guy. And this guy, he came from another gym. And I told him, I was like, well, did you just submit him? He's like, yeah. I like brought him, goes, hey man, just don't cheer about it. I was like, because you just submitted him. Like, and again, it's not a big deal, but don't rub his nose in it. So it's like, just, give yourself that mental yes. And then when you go home, you can be all excited about it, but just, be cool.
It's an unwritten rule. That's all those unwritten rules. Like, and I've had that before, just like talking technique, and you mentioned, and I was like, oh my God, I feel like and I've done that before, like, but it wasn't even the intention. But if your intention is like flaunt it in somebody else's face, but like, if you're like, hey, I got this technique and it worked and it happened so that it worked,
it's one thing to talk it out. It's another thing to go, yes, and celebrate
and rub it in their face.
Yeah, you don't want to celebrate. And again, the person didn't take it the wrong way. They didn't really care. But the reality is that if you continue to do something like that, like, I probably wouldn't want to like give you anything. I wouldn't want to let you submit me, because I'm like, I don't want to roll with a dude that's like, showboating and celebrating after he submits me. It's like, this isn't a match. We're training with each other. We're teammates, right? Like, this isn't the Worlds. This isn't the local tournament where you get to go on the podium. If you submit me, we slap hands and we go again. So like, be happy about it, but act like you've done it before.
Right.
You know, just chill.
Yeah. And I think, which is son of respect.
And again, it goes back to the golden rule. Do you want to have someone else like celebrating when they submit you? Probably not.
Yeah, it's what you tell your kids, right? Treat others how you want to be treated.
It's a funny, I think about that all the time. It's a funny rule, right? Like, say that, like, because most decent people would say that to their kids. Hey, treat people like you want to be treated. It's like, okay. And then like you look online and you're like, nobody follows that rule. It's like, look at the things that you say to people. You
repercussions, dude. They're not. No, when you're online, it's not as in your face. You can just shut it off.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is like people are hypocrites because like for me, like I don't say anything online that like I wouldn't be comfortable saying to the person's face.
Yep.
And if I have a disagreement, I typically say, well, hey, this is what I think. What do you think? I'm not trying to like slam dunk on you. And it's like, like how, to me, it goes back to this. If I'm going to, I think about this. I want to be like, and this goes back to a culture thing.
Yeah.
If I'm going to ask people to do certain things, so let's say I have children someday, I'm going to ask them to be a certain way, be respectful, and be kind to other people, then I best do it myself because I need to show. Actions are so much more important. They speak so much louder than words do. Because no matter what you say, people watch what you do. And on the gym, when you're inside of your gym, people look at the heads, the leaders, the people that have been there before, and they're like, okay, how do we do things around here, right? And the leaders, the people, the elders of the gym, the elders of the groups, and this is always the case with a group. When newcomers come in, they look around and they say, okay, how do we do things? So you might say, be respectful, but if you're out there like, getting pissy with people and getting angry at people after they submit you, whatever, your actions speak something else. And so I think that a lot of people, they really need to do a check on themselves, because if you consider yourself a kind person, or if you tell your kids to be kind to other people, whatever, do your actions. And, at this point in time, online and offline are very blurred as far as their meaning, because I mean, think about it. Yes, like something you say online does not physically saying it to a person, but those actions could still land you in hot water. I mean, you could say something online and you could have the feds knocking down your door.
Yeah.
Right. You could have people canceling you and making sure that you can't work in a particular field.
Yeah,
right.
Losing
So
your jobs,
they have repercussions. And so I think it's worthwhile to say, listen, at this point in time, what I say online and offline should be in conjunction with who I want to be and the kind of example I want to lead. And I think that, this is something for me. I think that it's a good thing, because I've had I remember thinking this with the young kids. Like when I was teaching kids a lot more, I always wanted to make sure that I was someone that if they saw me outside of the gym, they wouldn't be let down by the person that they saw, because you never know. Like I wouldn't want to be something where the kid says, man, Chewy's really cool. And then you see him out off the mat and he's like, oh, he's a terrible person. I mean, we're all rascals in some way. I love that Alan Watts has that term. He called it the irreducible rascality of people. I've talked about it before in the podcast, where each one of us is a rascal in our own way and we have our own flaws, but I want to try to make sure I lead the best example that I can for the people that are around me that say, hey, you know what? I want to follow this guy because, for whatever reason, I want to make sure that I'm doing the best job that I can to lead a good example. And so I think that, again, when we talk about that rule, that comes down to I think that's just such an important thing. Everybody should be trying to lead as an example of the other people that are in their lives, because we all come in contact with people.
Yeah.
We all rub elbows. We all influence other people. And, every one of us has a responsibility, if we want the world to be a better place, to try to be a good example of what we want to be, of the values that we hold true, and not the values and not the instant emotional responses that people have, but when you sit down and think about it, what are the values that I really hold true? Because we all get angry, we all want to immediately lash out sometimes.
Oh yeah,
but then it's about being wait 1 second, I've been with Jess for 7 years, right? If a really pretty woman came up to me and was like, hey, I would love to go hang out with you. Well, sure. My impulse is deep down, I was well, okay. Right. The guy in me is right. You're kind of cute. Right. But my overriding self, my conscious mind says, no, that's a terrible idea. I'll ruin my life. Like, it's like, no, we're not going to do that. Right. So it's about that. It's like, you don't want to act on impulse. Right. So like, sure, even in the gym, you get those moments, right? You get frustrated. God damn it. God, in your mind, you're like, got me again. Right. But you don't go like, you shouldn't start smacking the mat and cussing. I did that when I was younger, by the way. And you just realize it's a bad way to be. Right. Cause now you're letting yourself become, basically a puppet to your ego, to your fragile ego is really what's going on.
Yeah.
Instead of being in the driver's seat and saying, you know what, I am frustrated, but you know what, it was his day. Eugene got me. Shit happens, And so I think that's just one of those things that we can train on the mat and we can try to be in better control. And I think that for all of us, it's a good idea to try to be the best example that we can for everyone else around us. I think it's a responsibility that all of us has. Everybody wants to live in a better world.
Yeah.
Okay. That starts with all of us. If everybody was trying to live by those values, things would be a lot better. Right. So,
well, and if you're not true, kind of like you're talking about things online versus, in person, like those things are kind of like the lines are blurred, like things bleed over. Like,
sure.
You'll find like if you're one way in the gym and then one way outside of the gym, like eventually that stuff's going to come back to get you. So if you're not consistent, if you're not your true self, like eventually, like, or you write something nasty on somebody's whatever, message them something, that stuff's there, it's out there, and eventually it'll get back to you, and I think like you can only hold on to that like persona, that image for so long. And I think over time, like your true self it kind of washes out, like those layers wash off and you kind of get to the bottom of who the person is. Like
it comes out.
It does. And like I think we talk about it shapes like the culture in the gym. Like you talk about young kids, we're shaping them in a way, right? Like as parents,
100%.
As parents, like I'm shaping my kids, how I'm interacting with them or what I'm exposing them to, or if I get frustrated or angry, like my son, like I would, and I'm not proud of this, but like when he would like do something, I would like give him this look, right? I had that look. My dad gave me that look. I remember that look. So when he gets mad, you know what he does? He gives me that look. And I'm like, why is he staring at me like that? Why does he look so angry at me? And I'm like, it's me. He's reflecting, right. So like we're like
he's learning. He's like, this is what we do when we get angry.
We're shaping it. Right. Yeah. And so like it's interesting, like, we're shaping kind of our culture, for example, in the gym, how we do things can shape, or the people we associate with.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
We shape that goes outside of those, like that small box, like how we interact with other people. Like, are we gonna get, every time something goes wrong, on the mats, are we gonna get pissed and scream? And then if something doesn't go our way or somebody cuts us off in traffic, we're gonna like follow them and scream and honk our horn and do shit like that. That's why like jiu-jitsu, I think is valuable. Like you can take some of we always talk about like jiu-jitsu lifestyle and all that stuff, but I think about like the lessons I learned, more or less like dealing with difficult stuff, being more resilient or like gritty, I guess, being able to deal with difficult things. That's how it helps me, because sometimes I roll with you and it just feels like I'm a white belt,
Sure.
And but man, I can't get mad. Like I enjoy our roles because I always feel like I learn something, or I see something in a different, like a higher level. And so I can always learn from that experience and try not to get frustrated. And sometimes I do, we're all human. We get,
sure.
we're going to have,
and it's funny. I can tell that face, the furrowed brow.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're rolling your brow furrows. Like I can see it, but it is what it is. And I think one of the reasons where that comes from is you become the more you put yourself into difficult situations.
Yes.
The more conscious you become of the inner voices that are sort of vying for control, right? Because like whenever we do something, when we're difficult, there's always like these different like conversations that are happening. And obviously they're not lasting a long time. It's just these fleeting thoughts that are popping through, like, man, my arms are tired. I just want to stop doing this, right?
Yep.
These things pop up. Then there's the other side that says, no, I got to keep going. Like these things fight for control. And you've got to, when you're in those moments, you can then learn to control and say, no, I'm going to choose the ideas and the thoughts that are useful and resourceful to me rather than going down the other path. And then that spills, for instance, like let's say someone's passing your guard.
Oh yeah.
And your instinct is, my arms are getting really tired. I'm trying to frame, but I can't. I just want to give up, right? Or no, I can find a way, just keep holding. He's getting tired too. If I make just a little bit more space, got my foot in, right? Now regain my guard. it's the same thing with like situations where, you know, again, you get angry and you want to just lash out at someone and you have that urge. And then you're like, well, wait a second. Do I really want to be angry at this person? You know, do I really want to yell at my significant other and then be in a fight for the next 3 hours? Is this really that important? You know, all these things. And so again, like, you know, you can be in better control of yourself because of the fact that you're testing yourself and you're putting yourself in difficult situations, and it brings up that stress response, which again, if you're not used to it, it's going to take over. But if you're used to it, you can then deal with it, and you can basically kind of decide like, well, how do I want to respond to this particular stress, instead of just like knee-jerk reaction, boom, I'm going to lash out, I'm going to, like you said, follow this person home and honk at them and yell at them and try to fight them in their car or whatever. Dumb ideas.
Yep. Not risk versus reward is terrible on those things. But awareness,
right? Because think about that. Like, what are they thinking?
What are you gonna do?
But how many times do we all do this? We've all done this where like we do something and then afterwards we think to ourselves, why did I do that? That's such a dumb idea, right?
Yeah.
And then it sort of brings up the idea like, who's exactly in the driver's seat? Because we think we are, right? We think we're like this person that's like this little guy or girl sitting in this seat up in the brain, like basically we're this big flesh and bone robot that's being jumped around. Like our center of like where we are is like right between our eyes. It's where we think we are. And so we think we're in control of this damn thing. But then it's like, well, how come you keep doing dumb shit? Right? Like, oh, like you just do sometimes, right? Like, I mean, and we all have our vices, we all have our mistakes, right? Like if you've ever had substance abuse issues, who's making that decision? You're making the decision, but at the same time, there's a side of you that's doing it, and you can't. In your head, you're like, I don't want to do this, but then at the same time, there's this other side that says, no, you're doing this, right? You know, and like, I mean, just it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, like when I was younger, you know, I did it one time. I cheated on my girlfriend when I was younger, like when I was like 20 years old. Bad idea. Because afterwards, it was the worst feeling. I'm like, why did I do this? This was such a stupid, I want to throw up, right? Like, didn't feel good, you know? And so again, but who made that decision? Did I make that decision with my own conscious thought? Or was I being pulled by urges and sort of just primitive feelings? Who knows?
It's all you though, right?
It is, but
it's your awareness. Or were you aware of what was coming up?
You weren't thinking about it. You were just getting pulled by the strings. And so I think that's an important thing. And so it's like, some stuff's ours and some stuff sometimes just happening to us. And then again, by being in better control of yourself in different situations, you bring a little bit more of that control into it, rather than just being taken for a ride.
And also like, you know, going back to the culture piece of it, like if you're in a culture with people that are pretty, you know, like have their heads on their shoulders, like if you're with people that party all the time, you're probably going to end up partying.
Yeah.
If you're with people that train all the time, you're probably going to be
training.
You know, you are going to be a product of your environment.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like you talk about certain gyms, like everybody, you go to a gym and everybody does the same techniques the same way. They're all like, because that's the way the culture was. That's the way the drilling was. You just follow along. There's no creativity, right? And we scold people for that. If you're like over there doing some kind of variation on this movement, well then that's not good. But like at our gym, like, you know, go through this movement, then all right, upper belts, even say this, you're like upper belts, if you find a little, you got this position, get there and then see what you got. See if you want to work something else, play a little bit. And so, you know, and it's fun that breeds conversation, the creativity. Sometimes new positions come out of it or new techniques.
Well, and even studies have shown. So there was a great course that I went through about learning, and they found that people learned more effectively in pairs if there was discussion amongst the pairs. So just like instead of just doing the repetitions, if there was repetitions of the movements and attempts and then discussion in between, then that's actually, it made it better. People learn more information because again, then you're accessing that information in another form, which helps sort of further cement it. And so so getting people to try stuff out and then like, hey, how does this feel? Do you feel this? What does this feel like? You know, and just talking about things and like, you know, ironing things out together. So you're, besides the fact that you're then getting to be more creative, you're also learning things more because you're thinking about it on a different way. Instead of just regurgitating the techniques, you're then thinking for yourself. You're communicating with someone else and they're giving you feedback, and you're having to think about it even more from there. So it's a good idea.
Well, I think for even the coach, like for me on Fridays when I coach, and I ask questions, somebody asks a question, it helps me refine my technique.
Sure.
They'll ask, "Oh, what about this?" Or, "Oh, yes, this piece is important. Maybe I didn't mention that." You refine the way you teach, and then if you refine the way you teach, the technique gets better, gets smoother. Your students get a little better, and then the technique may evolve and gets better altogether. Like, I mean, and it might be more effective. So I think like just the questioning nature, because I think if it's like this authoritarian way, like this is the program, we're going to follow to a T and there's no deviation. You're going to get some people that aren't going to really enjoy that because it takes a lot of the creativity and the fun out of it.
And then there are going to be some people that love it.
True.
It's both.
And they can stick, and they have the opportunity to stick to the script, so to speak.
Right.
You're going to do shit just like this. This is, put your hand here, literally 2 inches above the knee, blah, 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 right there, this type of grip. There's other options, and so that's why I like, like we have different people at the gym that do things differently. Like Nick Pabone likes to do his lapel stuff, and I'll take a little bit from him, and then you'll take some defense from that, and you'll learn some stuff as far as defending. And so I think it makes it really interesting and growth.
Well, and this is one of the reasons why I tell people, like, they're like, what is the most important part about finding a gym? And, they're worried about like lineage and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, lineage can be important and all that stuff, and, as long as the coach is a legitimate black belt, find the general vibe of the gym that you like, because to me, that's far more, it's going to be more impactful to your training. Because, if you're simply, if you're like a person that's trying to be like a world champion, whatever, and you're at a high level gym, whatever,
that's the culture.
It's the culture. But a lot of the cultures that they have, these gyms are perfectly fine. They're good cultures. I've heard for many of them, right? And I don't know for all of them, but for many of them, I've heard the cultures are good and they're family-like. But again, for a lot of people, especially if you're just training because you enjoy training and maybe you want to compete a little bit, whatever, the most important thing for you is going to be who am I spending time with? Like, who are these people that I'm spending time with? Are these the kind of people that I would like to spend time with? I have personally been benefited from jiu-jitsu, besides the training and all that stuff. Like I could not possibly be the same person that I am today without it, because I was a young kid that came from a rough part of town, didn't have a lot of money, encountered all these people that were, from a different part of town that had some money, that were some of them independently wealthy and some of them had great businesses and all this stuff. I learned so much about different ways of being in life. Right. So then it was like, okay, it's not this one way that everybody that I'm around, this is the only thing we think about. No, there's this whole way of doing things that's open to you if you want it. It's really fascinating, and it changed me in a beautiful way. And so, and again, we are the company we keep.
Yeah.
And so, the people in your gym, is this the people you want to be around? And I think that's why it's also depending on a coach, you need to be mindful of the culture you wish to create. This is going to be different for every gym. This is going to be different based on your own personal philosophy. But you got to think about that intentionally. Like, what kind of culture do I want to create? And then also, then you have to sometimes, prune the hedges, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. Because if the culture of your gym is the core, right? Sometimes, if you think of it as almost like a plant, you've got the stem and the thick part of the plant. Sometimes you have to trim some of the flowers and the sides so that the thing can keep growing.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's going to splinter. It's not going to keep growing straight, or it's not going to grow like it needs to. It'll just start going all over the place. And so sometimes you have to do that, where you have to have people leave the gym. You're like, listen, you can't train here anymore because you're bringing something negative to the gym. You're bringing something where you step on the mat and all of a sudden people don't really, the vibe's gone because they're like, oh, so-and-so's here. This isn't going to be fun, that kind of thing. And that's happened before. And so, the culture is very, very important because of many things, but because of, again, we are the company we keep, and it's important to facilitate a culture. You can do this as a gym owner, but as a person, you can do this with the people you surround yourself with. But you want to be in a culture that's going to help you be the person you want to be, achieve the things you want to achieve, whatever those might be.
Yeah. Like people come in the gym, they're, like Ben Fowler, who's now our head MMA coach, has built a great, a a lot of guys are fighting now. All of a sudden, the program's really taken off, and like Ben was like fat, just unathletic, kind of just, and he came in and he like took to it, and he was, got in better shape, started taking fights and doing tournaments, and like now he leads from the front, and all these young guys are following his lead, and he's one of those guys I think that you see that transformation, and it was a lot of it was because of the culture that was at the gym, right? He could have probably still, not been healthy or what have you, but like Ben won like an amateur title, and he's got all these guys. He's got this culture now that he has created, and all these guys all of a sudden want to fight, and women want to fight too, and they're coming up. And we got people are competing all the time, and a lot of that's leading from the front, honestly. And that's something you've shown us, and I talk about it repeatedly on the podcast, that like maybe competing is not your main thing now. Like it's something you still enjoy doing, and something you feel is important for like certain reasons, but you do it, and you don't just like, I think like if somebody just talks about it, but they don't go in and show or actually do the thing, that's the difference.
Yeah. And it's okay if you don't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. If the person doesn't compete, it's fine. But
yeah, that's not the
there's
point.
Always something there's always something cool about being able to see it in action.
Well, just leading from by example, right? Like if you expect your students to act a certain way on the mats, and you're not that way on the mats, and you're just nobody's going to really follow.
Going back to one thing you were talking about, like something about our gym, like one of the things that our gym is not is elitist. So I've been to gyms that are elitists, where basically if you don't fit this like really specific mold, I don't want anything to do with you. We're pretty much like open. We're like, listen, like the only thing you got to do is be cool and train, and you can basically belong to the group. Right. If you're cool, you train, whatever, then you're basically going to fit in, now if you don't train, or if you're not cool, whatever, but as long as you're cool to everybody and you're training, you're probably going to fit right in. And Ben, when he came in, was just a young guy who, you wouldn't have looked at that guy and said, okay, this guy is going to be a lifetimer. This guy's going to be a black belt someday. I mean, he didn't look like it. He was like, this kid like looks like he eats too many Twinkies. Right. It's like, but he came in, he trained, and he was cool. He was respectful. And he kept showing up, and then that's what happens, right? Like it's very, very subtle things, and
he bought in and bought into it, and bought in. And I think you see some of the changes too, like what you experience, right? Whether it's emotional or like feel like you are in better health all of a sudden, or you're stronger, or you're not like. It's just you feel some changes in yourself. In your body and yourself. And I think the gym has a tendency to do that to a lot of people. Even like for me, it did, like confidence wise in myself. Like I was sometimes, my brother got jumped at a young age. Like he was like probably 16 and I was like 12 or whatever. And like, I was scared to walk down the street, man. I was always scared to get in any kind of altercation.
Yeah.
And even when I would go out, like as a young 20-year-old, I was still kind of scared of altercation and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying I like to get into any kind of skirmishes. I don't. I avoid them probably more now.
Skirmishes, that's a good word.
I avoid them probably now more than I did before. But I don't feel as as terrified or scared when I'm out. And
of course, well, now you're trained.
Yeah.
Now you've done things, and you're like, okay, I can handle myself if I need to.
But I'm going to go to that one guy in Detroit. I hear he's good at
dust.
So ridiculous, that guy. But anyway,
what's so funny is like as soon as for you guys that don't know, me and a guy named Ramsey Dewey, he's another guy.
Yeah,
it's his kind of thing. He likes doing this kind of stuff. And so I saw, this is almost a month ago, I saw this guy who he runs something up in Detroit, and I was like looking at him, and he does all these like really bad self-defense techniques, and I was like, man, and I got the reason why I found him is because there was one that says jiu-jitsu versus something taken.
Oh, really?
And I was like, jiu-jitsu.
I saw him on McDojo, by the way.
It was terrible.
Posts about him all the time.
So I was like, I sent Ramsey a message, like I was like, hey, let's do this video together. So we're finishing it up now.
Sweet.
And but I'm like, these techniques are garbage. It's like some of them are almost something, you know what I mean? But like they're just garbage.
They got potential.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just like, yeah, it's terrible. And I really wonder if he's like because he's got like almost 1 million like people on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but the thing is like, I don't know how much is that real and how much of it's like fake, because like there used to be
people following him just for laughs.
No, there used to be this thing back in the day where you could like buy followers, where you basically they would I don't know how they did it, like, because it's never something I was interested in. But like, for instance, there was a guy in on Instagram who would basically sell you followers, and they would just be people in India, and they would just follow you in these bot accounts, and you'd have someone with like 100,000 followers on Instagram, and then they'd make a post and they would have like 50 likes. You're like, so
Right.
no one's actually paying attention to you. This is weird. And so it seems maybe it's something like that where it's like these people aren't all
Huh.
real people, are they? Maybe
Maybe.
they are. I don't know, but because there's plenty of people that want to get the wool pulled over their eyes. But I'm like, it's terrible. So anyway, we made a video. It should be found soon.
That's
It's
awesome.
funny.
And he's got his own his spiel. He's got his little culture that he's got. Everybody's like dressed in these like little name badges, and they look kind of like Judge Dredd or whatever walking around. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing too. So there's an interesting thing when you are trying to create a persona. You don't. I mean, these aren't things you have to do, but I've done some studying on it, and there's certain things that you would do. So, for instance, Hugh Hefner, like he had his pipe.
Yeah, and his little jacket.
His little jacket, and his pipe was always with him. Now he didn't actually smoke all the time.
Right.
He would just have it.
Huh.
It was just a prop. He just like had it because he's like he did something with it, right? It was just his little thing. You can look at other people that have like certain things that you associate with them with, right?
Yeah.
As far as clothing or whatever it might be. I remember hearing about this like guy who was like a celebrity, who had kind of already outshined his or outlasted his heyday, and was then doing like infomercials. Well, when he would get flown out for infomercials, he said that he would put on this particular jacket and suit and whatever else, and would do what he called like this, like the Hollywood walk. So like when he would get out of the car, he would do this particular walk because he said if he didn't do it, people would get disappointed because that's kind of what they expect him to be. Yeah. Right. So you create this persona where it's easy to kind of put you into a box. And it creates a thing so that when you think about that guy, you think of the little headset, his little get up that he has, and you know what I mean. And
what is he? Who's he to be calling?
I don't know.
Who are you calling right now, dude?
I don't know. I always think about it looks like it's like something from like RoboCop.
Dude, I love all the parody videos.
Oh yeah,
like all the people are just doing random stuff. Yeah.
And my favorite was the dude. He goes, he like grabs. I'm just gonna navigate the bullets over here. I'm just gonna navigate. I'm like, it's funny. I've seen jiu-jitsu guys do that kind of stuff where they like they try to flex their lexicon during training.
Yeah.
I was like, and the thing is, listen, I am all for like being a wordsmith. Like there's a few guys I love listening to them talk because I love their ability, their mastery of like the English language. And it just to keep putting words in there, there's something about it that excites me. Like there's a dude, his name's John McWhorter, and I've got one of his books. It's on like bad words.
Okay.
And the whole book, he's just using words, and he's talking about, it's like, he's a linguist. And so he's got all these words at his disposal. I freaking love it. It's fun.
It's almost like poetry or something.
Well, he's just a wordsmith. It's like, he's basically, it's like what it to me, it tickles the same thing that I have when I look at someone and like I'm doing a technique and they go, no, put your hand 5 inches to the right. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, dude, that was so good. Like it was like, I didn't know that was like a thing or whatever. It's like all of a sudden, like, what was that word? I have to go, I've never heard that word before.
Or used in that way.
I haven't used it in that way, right? And so, but so, where was I going on that? I was
just nuance and wordsmith, and
I was going all over the place with it.
We always do that.
I had a point that I was going to make, and then I lost track.
John McWhorter,
wordsmith, linguist, and then I was somehow going to bring it back to old goofy butt.
Well, he was like the way that you said the way jiu-jitsu coaches kind of like
there we go.
Communicate a certain way.
So like I have a.
That's why you keep me
my
around.
My lexicon's not challenged. I can flex and use all kinds of fun words, right? But they're not necessary, right? I'm not speaking to a literary audience when I'm teaching a technique class, right? It's just not needed.
Yeah.
And I've seen some, there's some people like say a John Danaher. Yeah. That's just how he thinks. That's can just tell. Probably. That's just who he is. Yeah. Like that's not like a thing you should put on. But there's been other people where they'll use words and they'll use them kind of off in a way. Like there was one video I was watching, and the guy was. My cat has jumped in Eugene's lap at this point.
That is not anything besides exactly what you just said it is.
Hey Kiki. But I remember I was watching this guy, and he was going to push the person's legs to the side.
Yes.
Right. He's like, all right, guys, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to promote the legs to the side. I was like, you're gonna what to the side?
Promote.
Promote. You're gonna promote the legs to the side. Like, look, bro, just push the damn legs. We don't have to say promote.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean promote?
I'm gonna guide them.
I'm gonna navigate those legs.
Navigate
to the
those
side.
legs.
Navigate,
You better do
I'm
that
gonna
next
navigate.
time. Oh boy. Yep. Sometimes when I talk when I talk about like physical therapy type stuff, like there's certain words we use, but then like if you're speaking to someone that's not in that realm, I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, if you talk about like say like we're gonna work on like the something distal and
proximal distal,
proximal distal,
near far,
internal rotation of the anterior. It's like what the hell are you saying? Oh, we're gonna say your knee. What's the one that doctors have for it's like idiopathic myopathy or cardiomyopathy or something. It means that like you have a heart problem and we don't know what
it is.
Yeah, it's like I get it. It's like it's just written. Everything's like based on like what Latin or whatever.
Yeah,
but it's just funny.
It is. I actually took medical terminology in college, and it all kind of makes sense. Like anything with itis,
sure,
like inflammation, right? So like myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscles, kind of. So Miles muscle, kind of those kind of things. So it does make sense. But if you're not like in that realm, you're like, what the hell are y'all talking about?
It's like you got a heart problem. You don't know what's going on.
Well, and on the other side of it, like you look at like 10th Planet, right? They have certain positions. We talked about this with PJ Barch, and like he talks about like like knowing all these specific things. Like you may call this the matrix or whatever, like the matrix position. Well, it's kind of like having that knee, and what do we call before like a X is type of X guard or
K guard
or K guard or matrix. I don't know. So I don't know some of that stuff, but it's just like one position of your knee versus their leg.
It's like I put my leg here, and then like now it's gonna be a whole new guard. Like
But like I mean, there can be a use to it, obviously, because then like if you have like a 10th Planet system that you work with, like exactly what these positions are or these mid positions are and what you're trying to do, and there's a sequencing to it, so it makes sense for learning. But like if you're talking to someone who has no idea what that is, it's just gonna like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Are you trying to like flex? You're trying to show how big your brain is, kind of thing.
Yeah, like I said, you can tell when people are using it and it's second nature to them.
Yeah.
And you can tell when they're trying and it's not quite there. It's like the same thing as watching that dude's videos. You can watch them and you're like, okay, I've seen that you have tried to take something that's like a legit technique from some other thing, and you're trying it, but you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's like in the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
I haven't read it.
Yeah, so it's a good book. And he talks about this idea of thin slicing. And so basically it's this idea where he explains it where they have this statue, right? They uncovered the statue that, was from they'd never seen before. And these art people, I don't know what you call them, right? They came in and they looked at it and they go, I don't think that's a legit one. Right. They could just tell that something was off about it. Now, later on, they went through and explained what was off about it, about how these like little things were off. And they're very things that, again, that you wouldn't, it's hard to quantify or hard to kind of put your finger on what exactly is wrong with it, but there's something wrong with it. And so a lot of times, like when I'm watching these techniques, I'm like, there's something wrong with it. And it's hard to explain what's wrong with it, but you're like, well, his foot's kind of out of position. You can just tell, because you've been around it so long.
Like a sense.
Yeah, you get a sense for it. So you're like, you can just tell. It's just like you can look at someone's body and you can watch them walk towards you, but I bet is there something wrong with your right knee?
Yeah,
like you just kind of know.
Well, and some of those techniques, when it's rehearsed, right, and you get the exact reaction that you want. You're going to expect them. You almost anticipate their movement. In real life, you're not going to anticipate. They might move a different way than you expect. But it's kind of like a dance, and it looks smooth. So like sometimes in these jiu-jitsu technique videos, you see these really fancy rolls and all these like sequences together. Like they're giving you the exact reaction you expect when you expect it. So it looks pretty. Now is it going to work? And do you see that technique? Like if you're trying to figure out if it's a legit technique, have you seen that technique hit in a tournament?
Yeah, have you seen it against like black belt, black belt type thing?
Is it like once like somebody will hit you with a technique one time maybe that you don't expect, but then like is it something that they can legit hit you with over and over, or do you see it in tournaments over and over?
Right.
And that's because I think sometimes it's hard to tell. It can be. It can be.
It can be unless you have an eye for it. Like a lot of me and my black belt friends, like we'll watch stuff on Instagram and we'll laugh because we're like, that's never gonna work. But then you'll look in the comments and like someone's like, I'm gonna try this tomorrow. I'm like, good luck.
Yep.
You know, because there's like 6 steps to get this thing to work, and they're like it's just too much.
Yeah, just the setup itself. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, or a lot of times what it betrays is the fact that these people are so experienced from this position that they can do a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? And sometimes that can be a thing, you know, because for instance, like my back mount's like I have such good muscle memory from there. My body's so used to it.
It's smooth.
I can go watch a back mount like video on an instructional, watch it. A lot of times I can close my eyes and I can get a feel for it with where my hands and my arms should be. And I'll go try it and use it the very same day. Just because I can just do that because of my position. Now, if you put me in a position I wasn't as experienced from, I couldn't do that. But from like back mount and some of the stuff, I can just do that real quick.
And on the other side of it, like there's some positions or some techniques that look really high, like difficult and complex, but they're actually just very simple.
Oh yeah,
and they're smooth. They're like the speed of it. You know how fast it's done. And you're like, oh my god, what was that? Like your little back roll, your back takes, right from truck. Like it's fast.
It's timing. It's not fast. It's timing.
It's timing, yeah.
Timing. And timing's not about speed. Timing's about being
smooth.
in the right place.
It's smooth, honestly.
It's smooth. Well, that's what it is. It's smooth. It just there's not a hiccup to it. And so it looks very fast. It's not necessarily fast. It's just well timed. And timing is the beautiful thing, because timing is when you're hitting a technique. When your timing's really good, you're hitting the technique and you're not even thinking about it. It just happens. You know, that comes from, you know, time on the mats and drilling and then trying to hit it during rolls. And
and knowing exactly where to place your body or where you anticipate your opponent to be when you give them a certain, you know, reaction. But I'm interested in seeing that video with you and Ramsey, by the way.
I wonder what that guy's culture's like in his training area.
What do you mean? Oh, the dust guy?
Yeah. I wonder what that's like.
You think they use those badges to come into the, like, we don't use keys around here. We got this badge on a thing.
Yeah. It just I don't know. Something about his in the back, he's got like all these screens going.
Yeah.
It makes me think of like RoboCop. That's what, I just feel like we're like, it's in Detroit, you know, so just feel like it's like some sort of like futuristic. Was RoboCop in Detroit?
I think so. Yeah.
I've only seen like the first one, and I vaguely remember
amazing.
Vaguely remember it. I should probably watch it again.
The first one?
Yeah, just watching it, and then
if you watch
the graphics are probably like watching, you're like, oh god, this
the
is terrible.
Robot. Like what's the robot? Like the one with the
I know what you're talking about,
or not the wheels, the legs.
Yeah,
and it looks horrible. I remember seeing it.
Well, I think it was probably stop animation.
Yeah, it was like 1990 or something that came out.
It's like if you watch the original Terminator, and like the first one in the Terminator, like robots coming forward, and it's like
I love it though. It's such it talks to like it bodes to like how good the movie was. Like if like even the you know the like even the Star Wars, right? Star Wars, like the older ones, like the you know the visual effects are terrible, or not terrible. They're okay.
They
but like,
all right.
But I still love those movies better than the new ones because I think the story is so much better.
Well, the story was like closer to Joseph Campbell's work than this new stuff. I mean, that's where George Lucas got it. Like he basically took Joseph Campbell's work and broke it down.
But isn't it all kind of like a lot of these stories?
Well, a lot of it. Well, they have the same sort of. Not all of them, but most of them have the same steps throughout the movie, right? Pretty much all your major movies have the same steps, which if you know them, like you can watch it almost with a stop clock and you can hit the points.
I know this all too well, Chewy.
I know because we went to a movie together.
We went to Logan.
Yeah, we went to Logan.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it was interesting because they did a dual hero's journey where they had both Logan and the girl.
Yeah,
and they're both going through it. Like for instance, like one of the ones is like you always in a movie, when the hero comes out of the special world, they always have to leave something meaningful behind. Yep. And then Logan had to leave Professor X behind. So Professor X died as he's coming out.
Spoiler alert. You better know that already.
Whatever. The movie's old. If you haven't watched it now, whatever. And then the girl, his daughter, right?
What does she have to leave?
She left him.
Oh, okay.
Right. And that was what she had to leave behind. So it's like, you know, you always have to leave something behind. I think it's a, you know, and like, but there's even a cool one, like, and that's the idea of the refusal, the call. That one I think is so interesting because there's so many times in like my life where like I've wanted to do something and then like I get this urge to do it and I don't do it. And then eventually I do it and then it works out great. But I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? and there's this refusal of the call, the refusal of doing what you want to do, where you feel like you're being drawn towards, and you make excuses about why you shouldn't do it. Maybe you don't feel like you're ready for it. Maybe you're like, who am I to do this? Or maybe there's something else, right? I mean, like I signed up for wrestling my freshman year, but then I didn't do it. Sophomore year, did it. Started doing jiu-jitsu, and like I finally got in there and did it after months of like poking around until I got my buddies to go with me because I was nervous. All kinds of things.
What do you think? Like, and we've had this in some cases. People kind of start jujitsu, and then they get a pull to come back. Right? They'll start for a little bit, and then they'll be gone for a while, and they'll come back. Do you see anything consistently, like why people maybe, if they do take a break and then come back, like what the pull is or the draw is? And some people you'll see they'll come consistently and they'll take a break, extend a break, and they'll do it again. And so you got some of these guys that are like blue belts that have been blue belts for 10 years or something.
It's hard to say, man. I know that, like, for instance, like we got a guy, Bobby, who's making he's the most consistent he's ever been.
Right. Yeah. It was big Bobby.
And it's because a lot of things in his life have gotten better. He had to deal with some of that stuff too first. So sometimes that's a thing, and then other times it's just, people, we're all guilty of it. Like there's things that we, there's things that we need to do, and there's things that we want to do, but for some reason we don't do them. Some people get on a diet and they stop, and they want to be on the diet. They want to eat, but they kind of stop because they just lost control for a little bit. Some people want to keep going to training, but I'm tired. I'm wore out. Yeah. These kinds of things. And so you just let go. And so it's just it's a lot of times I think it has to do with discipline. And just sticking to it, or even understanding your own important values. Like I've seen like a lot of times where guys have come in and then, they'll get this has happened numerous times where they'll get a girlfriend and they drop off. Yeah. Breaks up, come back to the gym, and I've even seen women have the same thing where they're training. The guy comes along, is like, I don't like this. Yeah. I don't like, and then they quit, and then they come back after they break up. And I think it's important to make sure that, you understand what's important to you and your philosophy, your own personal philosophy. Everybody should have their own personal philosophy for things. Right. Where you really do some deep thinking about what's really important to you, and then you stick to that. And if people aren't on board for that, that's not the person you'll bring around. Yeah. If your friends aren't on board with those kinds of things, you don't keep them around as friends. Right. It's just like going back to the culture, because, the culture is everything. The culture of your household, the culture of your friendships, the culture of your surroundings, all these things. I mean, like, you really want to curate those things. And if people aren't, resourceful to the things that you want to do, then you don't want to be around them too often. Now, granted, we've all got family members that are a little crazy and stuff like that. It is what it is, right? For sure. We all got them. And then you go hang out with them. But like, I'm not going to go out of my way to spend tons of time with people that like make me feel negative. Yeah. That make me dislike things or make me get angry or whatever. Right. I want to be around people that like, bring something into my life that I find valuable, whether it be their friendship, their love, their presence, anything like that, so I, just like the culture of the gym is important, culture of your household, culture of everything, and again, that comes down to the people that you're surrounding yourselves and truly knowing like kind of what you want to get out of these things too. But I don't know why people like leave and come back. I mean, I think those are just a myriad of things. I think most of the time it's more of a discipline thing, or sometimes not really appreciating sometimes like what it is that they're doing, because a lot of times they'll leave and they'll realize how much fun it was and they come back and
reminds them of it.
Yeah. So
and then some stick around and some don't,
and which is okay. Then it's not for everybody. Everybody says jiu-jitsu is for everybody. It's not for everybody. It's just not. Yeah. Like it's not for everybody. Like, because again, some people don't like it. Like, and that's okay. And some people like they're not going to have the discipline to do something for a long time without getting like, something in return for it. And this is a thing too, I think is really like, you got to be careful with this. For instance, I've had more than a few people come into the gym who listen to Jocko, listen to Joe Rogan, listen to some other podcasts, listen to me online, and they hear about us talk about this place, these gyms and the experiences and the friendships and stuff like that. And then people come into it and they are sort of shocked by essentially the mundane training, right? Like you're just training. You're not like these amazing experiences. These are the things that we give to them, but usually in the moment, they're not amazing. You're just going through something. And it's afterwards, it's like, oh man, that was something, or like, even like with your friendships, a lot of times you're like, man, like you look back, God, that was some good times. Right. But in the moment, you're just doing it, but I think that sometimes people sort of they place too much weight on it, or they come into it with a too big of an expectation, as if this, like, this thing's going to fill some void,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, 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 like your problems will always be with you. And if there's a void, it's going to be there, but it can help
Yeah, absolutely.
potentially, but don't expect it to be this like thing where the skies are going to open up and, the light's going to shine down upon you. It's like, it's a thing that you're doing. Like, it's like, and you'll, and it's different for everybody, but it reminds me of here's an example. I was listening to this philosophy professor talk about this idea of going through and reading really challenging books, and he was talking about things like Plato's Republic and all this different stuff, right? And he was talking about that. He was explaining an analogy where, when he was a kid, he did this really hard hiking trip where they hiked for like a solid 7 days. And, it was really difficult, and they had to do all this different stuff with their food and whatever. And he said it was a really like powerful experience, and he wanted his son to have the same thing.
Yeah.
So he got his son and some of his friends and stuff like that together, and they went and did the same thing. And his son was like, "Why are we doing this?" And he's like, "I can't tell you, but you're going to get something out of it, but it's on you. Just do it." Right. Yeah. And, the son does it. And at first it's like skeptical, that's stupid. And at first it goes really bad. Like, cause the son's like grumpy and they're getting hungry. It's wet all the time. It's raining. And then eventually things started to get better. The boys started working together, and they started to depend on each other, and there was much more camaraderie and things like this by the end of the week. And at one point they're sitting on this peak and being able to just see this beautiful landscape. And he said his son came up to him and said, "Dad, like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done with you." And it was explaining what it meant to him. And so jiu-jitsu could mean something different to everybody, but like you want to come in and allow your own experience to happen. Like, listen to other people's experiences, and that's fine, but you have to be open to what's going to be yours, and yours isn't going to look like someone else's. You may not have the same things that the other people had. That's okay. You'll have your own. It's like when we were talking about this before the podcast earlier, people come into jiu-jitsu sometimes and they'll say, "I'm not going to do the gi," or "I'm not going to do no gi." Not because of their experience, because they're doing this on day one. They're doing it because of what they've heard other people say. Well, it's like, well, that's what someone else said. Wouldn't you like to have your own experience? Wouldn't you want to like try it out yourself and see what you think? That kind of thing. And so I think that's important. So, with jiu-jitsu, a lot of times people come in with these big expectations of what it's going to be. And I've heard Jocko said it was going to be like this, and Joe Rogan said it's going to be like this. Well, yeah, that's what they had. Your experiences could be very, very different. It could be the same, or it could be massively different. Be open to what comes, right? No expectations on it. Understand it could be this amazing thing to people, but again, allow it to sort of show itself to you in whatever way it decides to.
Yeah. And it's also in some ways a really interesting escape from because, inside the gym, it's like we talk about culture and a certain environment, right? And even during times when, society felt like it was just like breaking apart with riots and people, getting killed and all this stuff. And we were in the gym, and we were all together from all different walks of life, and we were together. And it was like a nice escape from all that
still
stuff.
That way.
It is. Yeah, it is.
I mean, even now, like, to me, it's much more representative of a lot of people, because the news will tell me that everything's bad and that like everybody hates people, and that, that like racial tensions are at an all-time high. And I go into the gym and I'm like, well, no one else seems like I don't know, like everybody's cool. Like, like I guess the tensions are supposed to be high, but that guy just gave me a hug. Like,
that's right.
And he's asking me how things are going, and then we're talking to each other, and we're communicating. So it's like, I don't know about that. Maybe that's like, if you want to be upset, whatever, but there's so many communities where you can mingle together and everything's great.
It is.
So it's still an escape to me, because
it is. And that's why I think maybe people come back, is because they see that it's just a good place to be. If the culture's right and the environment's right, it's just like a really fun, and I don't know, it's just like a lot of people's happy place, I guess, as silly as that sounds. They're choking each other out and sweating and sometimes bleeding. It's still, there's a feeling, like I always say, there's a feeling after training that's very hard to replicate. Like if you have a really good workout, you can get some of that. You get like almost like that high from a workout. I think there's a certain high you get from jiu-jitsu that I still get, like you feel like you accomplished something after like a tough class, or even just, just being around be around your buddies.
Yeah, I suspect that a lot of this is due to the fact that we don't have like religion anymore, right? Like, I mean, some people go to religion, but religion used to play a much larger role, and you'd have large groups and communities coming together to do things and whatever. And so this isn't really a thing as much anymore, right? You don't have these like large swaths of people coming together from different parts of town and whatever else for the same common thread they all share, right? We don't have that as much as we did anymore. And, the philosophers of the 1800s would talk about that, like, what happens when that goes, and you look at it now, there's people have adopted other things as religions, and you can think of it this way because people become religious to these things to the point where if you don't agree with them exactly the way that they say, you are a heretic that needs to be burned at the stake. Now just replace burned at the stake with like, we need to like tar and feather you in the public square of the internet or whatever, right? I mean, this is the way it works. You see this in jiu-jitsu sometimes where people are like, oh, if you do it this way, you're doing it the wrong way. It's this way. This is the right way to do jiu-jitsu or whatever. It happens this way. People become so attached to those ideas.
Yeah. Like jiu-jitsu purists, I think. And like the way like jiu-jitsu is essentially a self-defense, and jiu-jitsu's evolved. There was maybe initially a self-defense kind of like, that's the basis of it, right? Smaller person.
No, here's the thing I'll say about the self. If you look at some of that old self-defense stuff, I'll put that online with the dust guy. Like some of that stuff, I'm like, I've never seen anybody do that. Like, I'm like, who does that? Like, I mean, it's a cool demonstration and showing you what could possibly happen, like, based on throws and stuff like that. But I'm like, I've never seen it happen.
Yeah.
Like, even like you look at some of the fights, like when you look at people fight, they don't fight like that. People don't fight with like they're a bad guy in a comic book. Like that's not the way that things happen.
You see it when some of these people are like, jiu-jitsu doesn't work or MMA is not real or doesn't work, and they come in from some other martial art or they create their own martial art and they challenge these people at the gym and they're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. And then you see it goes bad quick.
Yeah. Or and you got phones now, man. You can watch what fights look like. Before there was a lot of uncertainty with like how things happen. And because like, for instance, we live in America. So if you're an American, for the most part, you don't see a ton of violence all the time. With your own eyes.
Yeah. Well, it depends on where you live, but yeah, for the most part.
Depends on where you live. I said most.
Yeah.
Most Americans, not all. Yeah. Right. Most Americans don't see a ton of violence with their own eyes because you're in a country that's fairly secure for the most part. Now you go to certain neighborhoods, things are going to get rough.
Yep.
Right. I saw someone when I was a kid, I saw someone when I was a teenager, an adult, whatever. But a lot of people but I haven't seen some like outside for a long time, I just haven't because I haven't been in places to see it. Right. Again, as as I curate my culture, I'm going to curate my surroundings.
Your environment.
Once I had the ability to do so.
Sure.
But, so you can kind of pull the wool over people's face. Like, oh, here's what's going to happen. Some guy's going to grab you or whatever. And no one does that. Like no one goes up to you and grabs you. Hey, buddy, give me your money. Right. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. Like they come up to you and it's a much more subtle situation. You can look at people with like their like where they have like phones and things like that, or they've got their ring, like the rings on the houses,
doorbell.
Yeah, you can see people robbing them.
Sure.
And how they rob them. It's not like, hey, give me your money, right? I'm going to point the gun at you and talk to you. It's like, no, the guy comes up to you and all of a sudden, like, it's like, boom, it's on, right? You're like, it's not this whole orchestrated thing. And, the value in combat sports, jiu-jitsu included, wrestling, all those other ones, is the fact that you're dealing with stress. And because you're dealing with a live opponent, nothing is set in stone. There's all kinds of variables, and you get really good at dealing with those variables on the fly, right? Like for instance, if some wrestler who you'd never rolled with before comes in, who doesn't know a ton of jiu-jitsu, all of a sudden he goes for a takedown. You may not know exactly what he's going to do, but you're going to be able to figure him out in a second. All right, what's he doing here? Okay, let me see what I can like lock up, because you're used to rolling with people in live situations. Yeah. If you're boxing, you might, if you've boxed before and you fought, some guy comes up to you on the street, and he starts swinging at you. He's probably not going to use perfect boxing technique, but because you've boxed before, you're going to know how to slip punches. You're going to know how to block yourself effectively, and you're going to know what to do. And so this is the secret sauce. If you train jiu-jitsu and you trained boxing and wrestling and all these other things, and you never rolled, you never sparred, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't. You'd have great technique. Good luck using it when someone actually tries to use it in the live situations. Your body's not going to know what to do.
Yeah.
You haven't had the time. And so that's the secret sauce of all the combat sports. That's where the magic is the way that we train them. It's the methodology behind it, not necessarily just the techniques, because the techniques you can find in other things. Like you can watch like old Bruce Lee videos, like one of his last ones, and he was doing like arm triangle chokes to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? He never trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was from it's a choke. Like humans figured out how to choke each other. It wasn't like the Gracies didn't figure it out. Like, I mean, it's like, I mean, it's been around for a long time. I mean, you had the jiu-jitsu and judo that had been around, or judo had been around since the 1800s.
Yes.
You had jiu-jitsu that had been around for a long time. We don't really know when. I think it's sometime in like the medieval period of Japan. And there was probably a predecessor before that. Obviously, they knew how to do joint locks and chokes and everything else, but they didn't necessarily train like we train. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole thing to it. So that's the secret sauce. And so, but again, I think sometimes I look at some of that old jiu-jitsu self-defense stuff. I'm like, nah, no, it wouldn't work. Like maybe, I guess if the guy like whatever, but otherwise I doubt it, and then there's some stuff that I saw. I was like, that's pretty legit. Yeah. But there's just something like, no, that's not I doubt it. It's like, it looks cool, but it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe for the time it was maybe more appropriate, but now like, I think just so many more people know how to fight now. Like you said, I mean, so many more people train. Like think about like how many people train jiu-jitsu or train martial arts,
or even just watching fights. And granted, they're not going to be great at it, but they can mimic a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, some expect. Yeah, like for when I first started jiu-jitsu, I watched a lot of UFC, right? So I already had. I couldn't really. I knew what the positions were. I knew like some people come into jiu-jitsu and they don't know the goal of like what's the purpose of this, why am I doing this? And I kind of knew the purpose of some of the positions, right? And I knew what some of the positions were, although it was very basic. I knew kind of what an armbar was. I couldn't really do one, but I knew what it was. I knew what a triangle was. I knew it was guard, close guard. So I knew some of that stuff. So I think it was easier for me to learn it. But like, yeah, now you see people like watch fights or they're familiar with it. And so you can kind of, I guess, maybe mimic a little, but still.
Oh, you can mimic a lot. I mean, like you can, my buddy, we watched shows and all of a sudden we're rolling or watching fights and we're rolling and he put me in a heel hook. Like he didn't really know how to do. He popped my ankle. But he didn't know how to do it very well. I remember, we knew how to do a basic rear naked choke. We didn't know how to do it well, but we knew how to do it. And we could choke someone out if we need to in a pinch.
Yeah, probably.
Just from watching it. So you can put some stuff together. Guillotine chokes. Guys know how to do a guillotine choke now. Just in the streets, you'll see guys do it. I mean, I remember in high school, you watch fights and guys would go for like double legs. Now they didn't know what a double leg was. We would on the streets and just call it a scoop. I'm gonna scoop him. I'm scoop him. And or the guys that'd be sitting on the sides. I remember they would like when the guy would get taken, they'd be like, he scooped him, because they'd get like a big takedown.
Yeah.
But they didn't know it was a double leg. They didn't know what it was, And I remember, watching it, and once even knowing wrestling, I realized that most people couldn't fight. Like you realize that they think they can fight, but like they don't know how to grapple. So I remember like watching people fight. I just remember in high school, you're sitting there watching, and then all of a sudden, like me and my buddy, we were wrestling partners, so we'd laugh at them because I remember there's these one guys, and people just naturally lock up. So they're swinging, they're punching, boom, boom, boom. Hands are flying, and they lock up with each other, and they're trying to like battle for the position. And we're like telling them to fight for underhooks, and they don't, they're like, we're laughing like, you guys suck. Like you have no underhook control at all. It's like, give them a whizzer, and we, and from like, then all of a sudden fighting my bullies in high school, oh, you guys can't fight. Like you can swing a couple punches, but like you can't grapple. So I could just dump you on your back, and that's all she wrote. So again, it's but again, that was from wrestling. It's not necessarily a self-defense art, but it could be used as one if you need to.
It really is. I mean, shit, a lot of that stuff's you get somebody on the ground, you can control them.
Well, look at that fight that happened, and this is a great example of how fights actually happen. Look at the fight that happened in that bathroom.
I remember
that wrestlers.
Wrestling like some football player.
Football players get into space being a complete like dick. And I don't know what happened, but the wrestler's nose is already bloody.
Yeah.
So it's something that already happened. And the dude's, like puffing up to him. And then, the wrestler eventually is like, all right, man. And then just double legs him into the wall.
Well, I think he had MMA experience too.
He did have some MMA experience, but that was a wrestling takedown.
Sure.
That was a wrestling takedown. I mean, that wasn't like
scooped him.
He scooped him, and it went really bad for the guy.
Oh yeah, it was horrible.
And that's how fights happen. The guy didn't say, "Hey, buddy, like I'm gonna grab you by your shirt." Like he was kind of in his face, like puffing up.
Yeah.
And then again, boom, done. Like that's how they happen fast.
Yeah. And I mean, then you add the environment. I mean, like you're in a toilet, like in a bathroom, like against the wall, like on the tile or whatever. Like, I mean, like there's nowhere to move. You're gonna be hip escaping anywhere. You're gonna pin you against that thing and just beat you in the head.
That's bad stuff.
Yeah, especially if it's a wrestler.
Yeah.
who's like good or
Yeah.
decent,
and you don't know anything.
yeah,
You
it's
know,
rough.
and that's the thing that's becoming interesting in our culture now, is because like just as a society, is that more and more people are beginning to train. So you don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
You're like, okay, this guy looks like a little geek, but he might be one of those jujitsu guys, might like whoop me up. And then, you know, even like MMA fighters, because of the weight classes, like, you know, you can see a guy like, he may or may not. Like I remember I was in Florida this year. We were down in Fort Lauderdale, and I remember the waiter at one of these restaurants, he looks at me from afar, and I can see him kind of looking at me, and then he rolls up on me, says, "Hey man, where do you train?" And then we're looking at each other's ears. We're like, "Oh, hey, we'll train," you know. So
Yep.
like me and him are the baddest dudes in the room. And it's just what it is. You know, it's like if you wanted to put us all square us off, we're probably the guys that could, you know, he
Yeah.
fought MMA, I fought MMA, like,
Yeah.
you know, we're professional fighters.
Well, even like we were in Denver, and like that dude stopped you. It was like from the airport. We were in the airport or something. We
Yeah.
just landed, and the guy was like looking at you. He's like, "You fight or something?"
Oh,
He was talking about some UFC.
Yeah,
thing.
it was an older fella.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
older gentleman.
Because I think he maybe went to like an early UFC.
Yeah, he said he went to an early UFC,
Yeah.
probably out there in Denver, and was talking about it. And
Wasn't that
everything
the
else.
first one? It was in
Yeah, it was
Denver,
the
I
first
think.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
McNichols Arena.
McNichols.
Remember he burped?
Oh no.
He's the Bill Wallace. He's like McNichols Arena. You know,
I don't remember that.
It was so good because he kept like there's a compilation of all his mess ups. I felt bad for him. You know, it is what it is.
Who is it?
Bill Wallace. He's a great kickboxer.
Bill Wallace. Okay.
Superfoot.
Okay.
Great kickboxer, but they had him in there out there, and he's like, you know, he's kind of the credibility to the thing because
Sure.
you know he was a bad good kickboxer, and they were talking. He's like, yeah, if he uses the ropes here, you know, and ain't no ropes, Bill.
No.
You know, and then like talking about the Taylor Tulu.
Yeah.
He's like, we got Taylor Tully. You know, I don't know. It's just funny.
Lost his tooth. That was the first. That was a crazy thing. Like, that was the very first fight. And he kicked him in the face, and the tooth went flying.
Well, so
and then like the ref is like looking like, what do I do? Do I stop it? I was like, dude is
because that's Vale Tudo style. It was
dude
like those
done.
guys weren't supposed to stop the fight unless they tapped or whatever. So the old school, but it's interesting, funny story about that fight. So not only did a tooth go out, but a tooth got lodged into Gerard Gorge's foot.
Yes.
So when basically all the fighters said that, like when that happened, it was like, what did we get into?
That's right.
It's real, you know. And then a tooth fell out and went into the crowd. And as the story goes, legend has it, that Gold's Gym was there with a nice table, and they wanted to do a sponsorship of the UFC because they wanted to promote like weightlifting and training, cross training with martial artists. And then that tooth comes flying out onto their table. And all the gym representatives are looking at each other thinking, yeah, we're not touching this thing.
Yeah.
We with a 10-foot pole. And then in the back, all the other fighters are watching like a tooth get pulled out of Gerard Gordo's foot, you know? So it's a crazy thing. Those guys are crazy because you think they didn't know what they were getting into.
Yeah.
The only guy that knew he was getting into was Hoist.
Yes.
And maybe Ken. The rest of them was
a
big surprise.
Yeah. Ken Shamrock was
because
obviously he's the dude that looked like, to me, he looked the scariest, right? I mean, he was all huge.
Look at the guy. He's jacked and, you know.
Probably roided out.
Oh, yeah.
And when you see that fight, like if you're someone that doesn't know anything and you see Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie square up, and you're like, oh, dude, this is going to be bad for Hoist.
And Hoist choked him out twice.
Yeah.
In the fight. So you got.
And then they fought when they were like 40 something. And like Hoist knocked him out, or I don't know what happened.
I still think the fight was at work.
Really?
I do.
The last one?
It was so bad. It was like there was just something really off about it. They had another fight too at one of a super fight at the UFC, and like
it went to
went to overtime.
But nobody won, right?
Yeah, nobody won. It was a draw, but like Ken popped him like one good time with a punch and busted up his eye. Yeah. But I mean, just nothing happened. He's sitting in guard, just like, you know.
Well, you start to you saw every time you read Breathe, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So like Hickson was talking about like how much I think it was in that book that when Hoist was fighting, like every time like he went out there, he got closer and closer. Yeah. Right. And it's just people were starting to catch on to the techniques. It was just like the evolution, like, oh, we got to figure this out, right? And every fight got, a little bit more hairy for Hoist, harder for him to win. But initially, it's just like a walkthrough. It's like somebody comes in that's really athletic, but they have no idea what submissions are. They're like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
But it was cool.
It's not that way anymore, though. Everybody kind of has at least a better idea of what's going on. Even people that don't know anything about anything have seen stuff.
Yeah. Like Adam and I were sitting there after I was like, man, these white belts are so much further along than we were. Like just thinking, I was like, what the hell's going on? Like they're so much further along. There's so much more, obviously more resources out there and more information, better training partners, better facilities, and better. I mean, shit, you have a black belt anywhere in your area. Now it's like we got what, 10, 12 at the gym?
Yeah, we got 10 black belts at the gym.
It's crazy, right? There's always like, there's times in class where we have like, if it's a smaller class, we have just like half black belts.
Like half and even. It's like half and half. Yeah.
That's insane, dude. Like when you have like one purple belt on the mats, and it was like, this is amazing. Purple belt.
Now it's like it's like one purple belt. It's like no, we got like black belts.
Yeah, black belts, and so it's more than the rest.
Most
of the
classes we have several black belts.
Yeah, it's which is fun, which is cool. I mean, the training has gotten so much.
That's
better.
Another thing about culture, right? Like, how do you keep people coming for a long time and wanting to be there? Then that's the thing that a lot of times some gyms lose. They, people get burned out. Yeah, coaches don't want to train anymore, whatever, and then the old core group falls apart. Because again, the leader ultimately is going to set the pace, set the tone for everything else around it. They become they become the thing that sort of everything else orbits around. And so like the gym owner, the coach, the head coach, whatever, even the coach for that particular class, their attitude sets the tone for the culture. And because that's what everybody's orbiting around it. So that's what's going to set the tone for everything.
Well, yeah, you're not going to promote somebody that doesn't, exude those values.
Sure.
Exudes that, like, if you're not a nice person or you're not a good.
Yeah, I don't want to say nice, because nice is such
not
an ambiguous word.
Nice.
But someone that is respectful and basically it sort of embodies the values that I hold, that I try to hold myself to. I'd like to see someone else doing the same thing.
Yeah, they're an extension of you and what you do. Sure. And they have to be that way, or they're not going to, you're not going to just because you're the most skilled person in the room doesn't mean you're a black belt.
No. All right, guys. So thank you for listening to the podcast. Just as a reminder, the rash guard and shorts pre-order with Epic Roll is going on right now. So again, it's December 13th through the 27th. This will air probably past the 13th. So that day is already passed, but December 13th through the 27th, December 2021 is when we're running this thing. So again, it's a pre-sale going on. If you want to get it, go to jiu-jitsu.net. You'll see a picture of me either holding up a t-shirt or a set of rash guard and gi shorts, whatever. Click there. You'll go to my shop. If you follow me on social media anywhere, you'll be able to find, I'll be posting about it. So you can find your way there if you want to. And again, get in there and you can order the shorts and the rash guard. The rash guard's really nice. I really like it. And the shorts are the Velcro-less shorts, which I really like because, again, I don't mind other shorts, but I really like having a pair of shorts where I don't have to worry about the Velcro going off. And then I have a pair of shorts, which are great, but then I can't wear them anymore. And again, if you want to do that, just go to my website. Also, again, thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web, who helped make the show possible. You can go to their website, charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu, and you save 15% on the order. And again, next time we have the podcast, I'll let you guys know how the sleep spray works. Again, I really like right now what I'm using the tincture as part of my nighttime routine, which has been pretty much consistent for a long time, where basically I take the CBD and I do my little stretching and shower and everything else. And then afterwards I go right to sleep and fall asleep like a baby. But I'm going to try this out and see how this sleep tincture or the sleep spray works. It's got some valerian root in there. And so that generally knocks me on my butt anyway. So I should be sleeping like a baby tonight. And also thanks again to our sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 to save 20% on your order and get free shipping on any of the men's grooming products that you would like to get for yourself or for the man in your life. And again, they're the premier men's grooming company out there. I like all of their stuff that they make. It's amazing. It's from the trimmers down to the colognes, balms, and spritzes that they have. I like all their stuff, and it smells great. So again, check them out. And also, again, if you guys want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, get access to the content there. And again, it supports the podcast, and you get a little something for the inexpensive amount of money that you would be sharing with us. And if you'd like to get my ebooks that I give away for free on building a jiu-jitsu game plan and having some drilling strategies for your jiu-jitsu, go to jiu-jitsu.net/join, JOIN, and you can get access there and join my email newsletter list. So, guys, that is the podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.